Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. I'm Mackie Hall, and I don't often need patterns, but when I need them, I need them. The bottom line is that patterns are everywhere. They're in furniture, they're in art, and certainly they're in ads. And from time to time, I need them in all those areas. And if you need a pattern, what better way to build it than to use your own existing art? So this is the third part of a three-part series on patterns. And this, if I might say, is the easiest one. That being said, if you want to get a jump start on patterns, check out the links in the description or right here. Once you learn to do this, you can export your art for use in other applications, or you can keep it in Adobe and Illustrator for the builds in there. Super easy, super useful. Let's go. All right, let's get started. First thing I want to mention is that we are using the Essentials Classic layout. To access the Essentials Classic layout, all you need to do is go on up to the top right-hand corner of the page, select Switch Workspace, and select the Essentials Classic layout. The reason I like the Essentials Classic layout is because it shows visually all the elements that I need on the page and keeps everything within quick and easy access. Next thing I want to mention is that we are using Smart Guides. To access Smart Guides, all you need to do is go to View, select Smart Guides, or Control U. Next thing I want to mention is we are going to use the bottom center of the page to highlight tips and tricks, key command, and hotkey recommendations. Finally, I want to mention that we're building this piece on a Windows PC. That means that when we recommend key commands or hotkeys, oftentimes it will contain the Control key. If you're using a Mac, all you need to do is swap the Command key for the Control key. All right, let's get started. First thing you see on screen right now is space art. This is art that I created for a previous tutorial. I'm going to be using this art for my pattern tile. If you want to use this art, all you need to do is click on the link at the bottom of the page, download the file, and you are ready to rock. Now that we've covered that, let's go ahead and create our pattern. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new document. We want to think about how we're going to build it. If we're going to build it for print, for example, we want to select a print preset perhaps, and then we want to change our size from points to inches. It just makes more sense when we work that way, simply because that's something we can understand. Swap from points to inches. And then let's go ahead and change the size of our piece. I always think about building my tiles in a square just because it's easiest to work with. Change it to a 6-inch tile. And since we're going to print, let's switch our color mode to CMYK. We'll scroll down, we'll make sure CMYK is selected, and we're ready to go. Let's create. Now that we've done that, let's get to the business of setting our background. In this case, I want to have a black background. It's always a good idea to have a background, even if it's going to be transparent, because that sets the parameters for the tile when we get started doing that. So what we want to do is we want to grab our rectangle tool, and we start at our top left and drag all the way down to the bottom right. Once we've done that, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to set it to black. Feel free to pick whatever color you want to pick. Let's have a black fill and a transparent stroke. That looks good right there. Let's go ahead and deselect. We'll grab our selection tool and deselect. Next thing we want to do is we want to bring in our art. So we're going to go to our space art file, and let's grab all of the art here. We'll copy it, and then we'll paste it into our new document. As you can see, it's a little bit large. That's no problem. All we need to do is scale it down to size. In this case, we'll double click our scale tool. We'll make sure our preview is selected. And let's go ahead and scale it down until it all fits visibly. If it's too small, don't worry about that. We can always scale it up on a piece-by-piece basis. That looks pretty good for now. Now that we're done with that, let's go ahead and deselect. And that gives us a measure of what we're working with. What we're going to do now is arrange all of our pieces and scale all of our pieces so they fit comfortably on that tile. Let's get started. Let's start with our stars. We'll move the stars off of our artboard first. We can always get those back at a later date. That'll be the last thing that we put on. The next thing we want to do is we just want to move our planets and spaceships around and scale them until we get a nice look. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we just want to establish a starting point. Let's go ahead and deselect everything. Let's just grab our orange planet first, and let's move it off to the side. It looks pretty good about right there. And let's go ahead and scale it up. The way we do that is we hover over a corner. We're going to hold our shift key and we're going to drag it out. What that does is it expands it uniformly. That looks good right there. Let's go ahead and deselect. And let's keep doing the same thing with all the rest of our elements. Let's take this planet, scale it up. Again, we're holding our shift key and dragging it out. Looks good about right there. And let's just keep massaging things and keep moving things around. Just keep playing with it until you've got a look that you're happy with. Again, this isn't the final piece. We've got lots to do between now and then. That's a good starting point. When we build out these tiles, we want to make sure that all of our elements occupy the space inside our tile or inside the artboard that we're going to be using as the tile. Let's add the stars in. Let's deselect that. That looks pretty good. That's our starting point for our tile. So what we're going to do next is we're going to select our entire tile, drag across it just like that. And now that we've done that, we're going to select Object, Pattern, Make. Note that you get the new window that pops up that says a new pattern has been added to the swatches panel. That works fine right there. Let's click OK. And then you've got your panel options right here. This is where it looks a little bit daunting. I wouldn't get too stressed about it. Instead, what I want to do is I want to look at my panel and I want to see what it looks like. The first thing I'm going to do, just to make life easy on me, is I'm going to go through my options. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename my new pattern Space Pattern. Next, I'm going to keep my tile type on a grid. There's several types that we can select from. I'm just going to leave it at grid. It makes life easiest for me. Note the size of it, width and height are 6 inches. We're not going to change that. Next thing is overlap, and this is really interesting because we can see if there is any overlap, if we've got any elements moving off our panel, that we can start playing with it and make sure that things look uniform. It's always nice to have a couple elements overlapping so then you can't really tell the end of your pattern. So here's how we're going to do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to swap copies from 3x3 to 1x1. That makes it easy for me to see what my pattern is going to look like. And then I'm just going to grab a couple of elements and I'm going to move them off the edge. It'll repeat on the exact other side, but it just eliminates that barrier or that border. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this planet right here. I'm going to drag it off the edge like that. Deselect that. And that's going to be a good start right there. If I zoom out a little bit, all I need to do is press Control minus and we can see or a pattern tile more clearly. Next thing I want to do is I want to keep going with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this piece right here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag it. I'm going to move it off the bottom. Now, if it moves off the bottom, make sure that there's room on the top for it. So we've got to move this planet down along with some of the other elements here. So I'll grab the spaceship right here. I'll move that down. Then perhaps I'll grab these elements right here. I'll shift to deselect my background and I'll arrow them down holding the shift key. That looks good right there. Deselect. And then I'm going to grab this planet and I'll move that down as well. I don't want to move it too far down. I'll move it slightly over because notice that we've got this planet that's going to be coming in on this side as well. Next thing I want to do is I want to grab this planet right here and I want to move it off the top just a little bit. I think that's going to look good, probably right there. And we'll go ahead and deselect. Now that we've done that, note that we've got something overlapping on all sides. How's that going to look on a pattern? Well, we can test that out by going back to 3x3 and taking a look. The first thing you notice is that the planet on the left is not duplicating on the right side. So we want to change that by changing our overlap. What we're going to do is instead of left in front, we're going to click right in front. And note that that fixes that issue. If you have anything not running over the top or the bottom, now notice the pink planet, you'll see the same thing. So we're going to switch that overlap from top in front to top in bottom. Let's see if that fixes our issue. It does, however, notice the other planet. So we need to fix that. We can only have a planet overlapping on one side. So we're going to go back to copies, going to go back to 1v1, and then let's move this planet down off of the top. That looks pretty good right there, and I think that'll solve our problem. Once again, let's go ahead and test our copies. Let's go from 1x1 to 3x3, and let's have a look. Now note that our planet on the bottom is now cutting off, so we're going to switch from bottom in front to top in front. Let's click on that. Notice that solves that problem right there. Let's click off of our piece to make sure none of our planets are selected. And if we take a look around, that looks good right there. One thing maybe that I might switch over is this planet right here. It sits off a little further right than I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it. I'm going to arrow it over just a little bit. Notice how that affects the entire pattern. I'm going to deselect now. I think that looks really, really good. Another thing you can do if you want to look at your tile in relation to other tiles, what you can do is you can always dim copies. In this case, let me take the copy dim from 100% down to 50%. You can see how the main pattern works in relation to other patterns. Before you complete your output here, one thing you want to do, I'm going to switch this back to 100%, is you want to make sure if you're outputting your tile to deselect Show Tile Edge and to deselect Show Swatch Bounds. It just makes things a little bit easier, and if you export to Photoshop, it will ensure that those tile borders are not showing. Now that we're done with that, all we need to do is close this window right here, and let's go ahead and arrow back to our original piece. Now note my piece right here remains unchanged. That's okay. These are just base elements. Everything has been changed in our pattern. We double click on this once again right here under swatches. You'll be able to see what our pattern looks like right here. Let's exit out once again. Now that we're here, what we can do is we can grab our rectangle tool and we can make our tile as big as we want. In this case, now that we've got our pattern created, we can export our pattern to other files or other applications simply by creating a new tile. We'll grab a rectangle tool and we'll create a 6" by 6" rectangle. We'll make sure that our fill is selected and that our stroke is transparent. If our pattern has not appeared in it, all we need to do is we need to open up our swatches panel and select our pattern. Now that we've got that, all we need to do is we can select our pattern, we can cut it, create a new document. As you can see right here, this is an Illustrator 8.5 by 11 page. What we're going to do here is we're going to paste our copied artwork or copied tile. And now once we've got that, if we open up our swatches menu, you can see our pasted tile right here. We can double click on it and we can see our space pattern right there. Now that we've got that, all we need to do is we can grab our selection tool, delete our tile, and then we can just grab our rectangle tool and drag from one corner of our page to the other. Note straight away, our pattern pastes in. Let's go ahead and deselect. by grabbing our selection tool, clicking anywhere on the page, and there you go. We can finish a page design setup by adding in the other elements as such. There you go. That looks good. We are done. All right, now it's your turn. Build some of your own art and make a tile pattern from it. Need outside art? Check out pixelsurplus.com. They've got tons of resources and lots of it is for free. All right, that's all I've got. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. Otherwise, throw me a like. I'd really appreciate that. I'd appreciate it just a little bit more if you subscribed. We'll see you next time. Peace.